So, okay, just to like have a disclaimer, the parenthetical thing changed from being non-existent to maybe, inshallah, not really, and I just stopped with the not really, but I think like it would be great to just have this discussion of like what type of stuff that has to talk to each other between the theories that I'm going to pit to each other, right? So today, Utku, by the way, from UMD, and today I'll talk about sentences that has this like a weird agreement phenomena. I'm pretty sure you already know, but I'll go through it anyway. It's pretty boring at this point, but I love it anyway. And I will pit its possible explanations to each other using Turkish register facts. And I'll get to that as well. So here's the easy sentence from Turkish, I'm sorry. But you basically have the reading of manager's cook is jumping at the kitchen nonstop. And this is like a very easy sentence, singular subject, singular verb, life is good. And if I give you this second one, now the sentence is bad because you have this like a lar at the end, plural marker in Turkish, and the sentence is unacceptable and ungrammatical, and it's very easy to detect this one. The Turkish speakers, if there's any here, they immediately went like, oh no, this is bad. But what happens is that, of course, the story in the agreement direction goes that when you change the nearby noun, a number of the nearby noun to plural, suddenly you have this like a weird judgments that are like not really ungrammatical, still acceptable in some cases, and you will find this like a systematic increased acceptability with the existing plural nearby. So this third, sentence 3, brings up something that's called grammaticality illusion. So people look at this sentence and go like, you know, actually not a bad sentence. So they're illusion to think that the sentence is grammatical, right? And I will start with this. These are the boring cases, and I will bring up the more fun cases in a second. But first, let's talk about like how these effects come about. There is like a bunch of ways you can do, of course, like eye tracking, reading, maze probably as well. I don't think anyone did it in Turkish anyway. But today we'll talk about a difference in attractor number. Difference in yes responses as a function of attractor number. So here you have a plot, and I will put plots like this. It will follow the same structure. You will have a header, grammatical, ungrammatical. You will have color-coded, plural, and singular. So red here is managers, and blue here is manager. And all of these sentences are ungrammatical sentences from two Turkish experiments, Lago et al. And our experiment with Pavel Logachev. And you immediately see the difference, right? The red ones, and I'm putting here I'm putting here like a doubled standard error, so like if there was anything, it would come like they were overlapped. So this picture will get messier, but this is going to be the main thing that I'll iterate over. But why this is the case? Why do we have this difference? And there are like a bunch of theories, and I will focus on 2 of them, following Yadav et al. And their simulations. I will try to explain the non-linear Q-based one, following Wagers et al. And I will explain the distortion representational ones, following Hammerly et al. And Eberhard. So here I have the Q-based retrieval one. The story goes like this. If you're reading this sentence, managers cook, and then you say are jumping, or you read are jumping. The moment you come to are, you go like, okay, there's something wrong with this sentence, and you go back, try to retrieve whatever there is as a available controller. In most cases, it will be a bad sentence. You'll be like, no, I don't accept this one. But there will be cases where you go like, you know what, okay, maybe this other noun, I will retrieve this for some occasions, right? And of course, I'm putting a lot of agentivity to this participant, but that's not the case usually. What happens for representational account is that you let the verb talk to one single representation, and that would be the main DP here. The number on the managers somehow percolates and changes the entire representation of the DP from unambiguously singular to somewhat plural. And depending on how much plural meaning there is, you will have more likelihood to make errors or accept sentences that are erroneous as grammatical. So what are the results? Usually we see, you remember this picture, it's the same picture on grammaticals. Both theories predict this pretty easily on the effect on the yes responses. The fun part start with the grammatical sentences. So we have the manager's cook now is jumping, and retrieval account says, not necessarily, but says, you will most of the time perfectly retrieve this perfect match you have with your cues, right? So you're looking for subject and minus plural, let's say, and you will have this perfect match. But there will be cases that you might still retrieve the other one, and they will be basically calculated as like noise, you know? But that will be pretty low. So retrieval account predicts pretty reduced or almost none attraction effects, which means the difference between singular and plurals in yes responses. For representational accounts, that's not the story. For representational account, if you remember, the entire thing was about the DP and the representation of the DP, and we have not changed anything within the DP. So whatever you must be doing in terms of like searching a controller that is like plural-like or singular-like or singular should have the same reaction when you have the DP plural-like, right? So now we do have the is. So NP plural-like, since it's plural-like, should have certain probability of becoming being deemed as ungrammatical. So representational account predicts that however much you have the grammaticality illusion in ungrammatical sentences, you should have ungrammaticality illusion in grammatical sentences, meaning that you will look at this sentence and you'll go, no, this is a bad sentence. I don't like this one. That apparently was not the case for a long time. And here, I'll start with the retrieval thing, which is like they predict there's no effect on attraction, simple theories, simple life, happy Utku, I guess. But that's not the case. Recently, what happened with the agreement traction and response bias is that Henry Lee et al. Found when you manipulate what participants see before the experiment or how much grammatical and ungrammatical sentences they see during the experiment will change their response bias. And so they argued that this lack of an effect in grammatical sentences was a byproduct of the experiment and not due to the human parser or how we compute agreement, right? We tried to replicate this finding in Turkish, and we were not able to replicate the experimental instruction manipulation, so participants did not respond to that. But when we grouped them according to their calculated bias, and group participants having yes bias versus no bias, what we have seen is that, yes, the result that we find was replicable. So here I have a slightly messier picture. Now again, if you look at the top headers, you have the ungrammaticals and grammaticals. Now the x-axis is not studies, but participant groups, right? And the color coding is still the same. So what you need to look at is that in grammatical sentences, if you have a yes bias, so life is good, you come to the experiment, you say, you know what, I trust this experimenter. I will say yes to everything. You have the one on the left, and there is no difference in acceptability between the singular and plural. But if you look at the no bias ones, so people without bias or people on the other side of their like extremely judgmental of what I say anyway, they don't like sentences usually, and this affects their yes responses. But more important, they affect their yes responses selectively. So plural gets even worse, right? So now we have the ungrammatical illusion as well. But this is amazing, actually, but the problem is that this between subject manipulation was really hard to implement. And I mean, I don't think anyone else replicated it yet. One reason is that it's so clear, it's a great paper, it's so clear that you don't have to do it, but the other possibility is that it's really hard to implement. And I sucked and I was not able to, but then we were able to like salvage it, you know? Other takeaway is that the way we did it, calculated bias, we used this like a non-agreement fillers to calculate their response bias. And what happened is that when we tried to like do the same thing for other experiments that luckily put their data online, it was not easily replicable. The ungrammaticality illusion was very finicky. So even though we were able to replicate the results for us and they were able to do it, there was something missing, right? So what would be a next step? What would be better? And I was like, well, can we gather more convincing evidence? Can we turn off attraction effects? Or can we, sorry, not turn off attraction effect, but can you turn off the lack of attraction effects in grammaticals without using between subject design, right? And luckily, I speak Turkish. So I was just going around and like telling people about this weird thing. And one day they're like, Utku, why not use register effects? And today I will treat this grammaticality asymmetry, lack of effect in grammatical sentences, as a ceiling effect. I will use Turkish data to manipulate the overall acceptability in conditions. I will either increase or decrease the acceptability using register, right? And my hypothesis is that once we free ourselves from the shackles of the ceiling, it'll be fine. We will still find the effect in grammaticals. So what does Turkish register do? There are two things that it does. First, let's start with the formal addressee. In Turkish, explicit formal addressee, like when you talk to someone and you say sir or ma'am, that one, not the subject, can control the agreement and trigger plural agreement, right? If you have sentences like this, ungrammatical sentence, manager singular, cook singular, are jumping, should be bad, right? The moment I add sir or ma'am to end of the sentence is perfectly grammatical to me. And from the judgments I have from my friends as well, it's also grammatical. But I know that there's a dialectic difference. Also, I use this interjection at the end, but technically you can put it anywhere in the sentence. You can put it between the DPs, you can put it in the beginning, everything will be fine. So what does it do? If we have these conditions in an experiment, basically we increase overall acceptability in this specific set of conditions. So we have this controlled ceiling data for ourselves. We know these are going to be very highly accepted. And we also do something very sneaky here, which I did not talk about, and which was the reason that it changed from maybe to inshallah and not really, that we introduced now this new controller thing. Now there is this additional thing in the experiment that controls the agreement, right? So there is this uncertainty about, well, is it going to be the subject? Is it going to be the effendum? Is it going to be something else? Right, so just keep that in mind. The second thing about Turkish register is informal addressee, right? So you can use either sir, ma'am, or you can use dude, right? And in the Turkish case, it's lan. So by itself, it does not have any effect on acceptability, of course. So you can use any sentences with lan, that would be fine. So here's an ungrammatical sentence, still an ungrammatical sentence, right? Singular, singular, plural ending, singular, singular, plural ending, nothing goes bad. I mean, everything goes bad. Nothing goes bad in the sense that nothing goes great. But when we introduce job-related hierarchies to the sentences, we can induce register incongruency effects. So I was lucky, initial experiment in Turkish, done by Lago et al. Used this like managers, cooks, millionaires, taxi drivers, soldiers, commander, and I was like, okay, when you add lan to this sentences, they are really bad, right? So here we have this grammatical sentence, managers, cook, is jumping, perfect sentence. You add lan to it, and it's suddenly like very weird. And if you ask me like why, in text science, why this is happening, I don't have a proper answer, to be fair, but I know that this is pretty weird to me. So I don't know what is the judgment in English, but this lan is more than a dude and somewhere between like a cuss word, So maybe that's why in an experimental sentence it's weird. So just to recap is that we want to increase formal addressee ones, we want to increase acceptability for the formal addressee ones, and we want to decrease the informal ones with the registered incongruency, right? To get rid of the ceiling effects, and when you get rid of the ceiling effects, you will see this nice picture of like, there's a difference on the left-hand side, there's a difference on the right-hand side, difference in grammaticals and grammaticals, right? And so these are experimental, the base of the experimental items. So the vanilla agreement attraction manipulations, you have verb number, attractor number manipulated. Verb number is like grammaticality in this case, because every head is singular, right? If you look at 10A and B, the verb is plural and grammatical. If you look at A and C, the attractor is plural, right? What we did is that we added the register to it. So imagine that 4 conditions, now there's 8 of them, and you either have effendim at the end or lan, right? We use speed acceptability judgments, simple life for me, easy to analyze, but really hard to predict the response times, I guess. 400 milliseconds per word, and then they have like 3 seconds to say yay or nay. And the acceptability judgment were like, does the sentence sound natural to you? Plenty of subjects, 174, plenty of fillers, and proportion of grammatical to ungrammatical is 1. So we don't expect any ungrammatical-grammatical ratio problem, right? Here is the boring results. These are the formal ones. You see the header formal register. Ungrammaticals, again, it's like even more boring because we always know there is going to be an effect, right? Acceptability is pretty high. This is mainly because effendim is already like giving a lot of things to say yes, reasons to say yes. But there is still the effect of attractor number. Grammatical ones, as you predicted, they are at the ceiling because overall, you really expect to say yes with the effendim anyway. And by really high, I mean Turkish high, which is like 90%. I haven't seen any attraction studies in Turkish that is like above 90%. So this is expected. Formal already increased the acceptability. Whatever, there is a ceiling, and it should be hidden. The effect should be hidden anyway, right? Now the interesting results, but the boring part. Again, we have the ungrammatical ones for the informal. There's an effect. The y-axis is like around 30%, which is like already what is the case for the other Turkish studies as well. And there we see the difference between the attractor number, right, as expected. The grammatical case is a different one. So this is like the important picture, which is that now we see 2 things. First, overall acceptability is lowered. People don't really like lan, even with the like everything is fine, you see singular, 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 still bad. So we see this acceptability of like almost 75% in some conditions. But what is more important is that this acceptability changed selectively. So you see even more decrease in plurals. One way to look at this, yes, this change selectively. The other way to look at it is like there was always a difference, and we just were able to see it now because of non-stealing effects, right? So what happened again is like singular, singular, lan, singular, plural, singular, lan, and this happened to be even worse. I have some modeling results. I am happy to talk about them if you want to geek about them. Here, I'm just showing you the 3-way interaction. What it doesn't mean, it means like the difference between the singular and plural attractors in informal versus in informal conditions, right? So the attraction effects difference in informal and informal ones. So what we see is that we see reduced yes responses for this 3-way interaction for formal ones. So I have 30 seconds, great. What are the take-home messages? I'll just take 1 minute. Lack of attraction effects in grammatical was hopefully, at least in Turkish, was due to ceiling effects. Grammaticality asymmetry was a product of experimentation and not the actual computation. Does this imply really that retrieval accounts were misguided? I initially wish to say yes, but when you think about it, the way that I did this experiment is that I created this additional uncertainty about what the controller is. While you're reading it, you come to a point where like you decide, okay, now it's not the subject and plural anymore, now I'm looking for formal MLSC in the sentence. When this happens, probably when you see offendum, so you carry this like weird feeling of that, oh, it's never certain that I'm going to say yes to this sentence, right? So this actually pretty consistent with the nonlinear retrieval accounts is that you only go back when you have a reason type of theories. And one way to think about this, I think, is that this thing happening with the representation or like a cue mechanisms, this distortion might be modulating the retrieval behavior, which is pretty close to what Yadav et al. Already said. So one can see as this like this ceiling effect to be like, you know, there is like a somewhere in between where we can explain cue-based behavior due to distortion in representations. Thank you so much. Special thanks to these people.
Hello. Hi, Utku.
Hi.
So I have one comment. So when you were talking about offendum and non, this like the comparison, and so you said that it might be because of the job hierarchies, but I think I might have a grammatical sentence for lan with the manager. So if you say, yöneticinin aşçı mutfakta sürekli zıplıyor lan, when you say that, like the aşçı without the agreement there, right? So it is still possible. So I can say that the registers like offendum or lan doesn't necessarily is about the agreement attraction, but the whole style over the sentence. So it's like, it's not just affecting the verb, but it's also affecting like the, as I said, the style of the sentence.
No, I definitely agree. It would be amazing to know like why this ungrammatical or like unacceptability occurs. But I agree with if you delete this, which is like the Turkish possessive relation marker, sentence gets better.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, interesting talk. I'm Jack from University of Illinois in Cascade Reading. I have a question about something that I just can't get over because maybe I just don't know how register works in Turkish. But what was the motivation for putting offendum at the end of the sentence rather than somewhere before you get to that, critical point? Or even, I mean, since you're manipulating register, even just manipulating the context, like, I know you were avoiding between subject variables, but having one group of subjects who, okay, you're always going to be talking like in a formal register, and then tell the other group, okay, you're always going to be talking in the other register. So I was just wondering, like, why at the end of the sentence was it that, oh, but in this case, it's formal?
Well, the context of this experiment is like, while I was doing my master's thesis, I think, I was pretty worried about like people actually forget stuff and don't care about the experiment anyway. And they're just undergrads, like biology undergrads, they just want to press the buttons and get the extra credit. And I was like, I don't want to put something that is like related to my question towards the beginning of the sentence where I assume they might forget it anyway. Mm-hmm. That was amazing. But like I said, you can put offendum anywhere in the sentence.
Yeah, I would love to see it beforehand and then see what happens with online.
That would be amazing, actually.
Steve Polistralis, University of Kansas. Thanks for the talk. It's a really fun but well-motivated manipulation. I'm just a little curious about your story about how ceiling effects are the reason why it's so hard to get ungrammaticality illusion. Because for, maybe not so much for this experiment, but some of the other data you showed, it kind of looks like the ungrammatical conditions were a little bit close to floor. And then I thought, like, well, if ceiling effects prevent ungrammaticality illusion, then why wouldn't floor effects prevent grammaticality illusion? So it makes me think like maybe there's still some story that hasn't yet been told about why ungrammaticality illusion is so hard to find. And I don't know if you have any speculation about any other reasons other than ceiling effect that might be causing that.
Well, thank you for the question. I agree that like the reason that it changed the maybe or not really is that I actually started to think about it. Like, maybe yes, actually the reason that this happened is that there is uncertainty about the representation here, and maybe inducing this uncertainty is some way harder in the singular sentence, like grammatical sentences. But I just want to say that like in the Turkish ones, the floor ones is only the one that we manipulated the response bias. So in this experiment, one can assume that if there was no response bias, maybe this floor one, this no bias thingy here, this one should not show an effect. But these are the participants that are very skeptical about the data anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ashlyn Winship with Cornell. Thank you, this was really cool. I was wondering if, like what your thoughts would be if you changed your stimuli so that, say you had something like the manager with the cooks is jumping, so the distractor is closer to the verb. What your thoughts are on like if that would have effects on the acceptability with the formality manipulations you made, and also if you would consider that being just like more noise introduced to the retrieval accounts.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. I don't think anyone in Turkish tried to manipulate the distance. Maybe Elif Nur did with Matthew Wagers. But I think in those conditions, what happened is that the data they found was acceptabilities were near 40%. So like almost like a random chance. And like it's so wild acceptabilities. And I assumed I agree with the question, like you put the answer in the question by saying that maybe like there is the uncertainty that doing the bigger bulk of the work. And I think in their data as well, when you manipulate the distance or the cases, I think they also did that. Then with the introduced uncertainty, effect should be even more higher, even higher.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayan Keshav, Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So I look like at your figures, and you're saying that those items are ungrammatical, but they do get accepted in quite high rates. So sort of, I guess my question is, do you think that the reason that you kind of get the difference between the conditions is because of this maybe agrammaticality, or because of the uncertainty you introduce with the formal stuff? So I guess if you had items with formal final kind of addressee, but the critical items where you expect to maybe see the ungrammaticality illusions would not have the dude, just be plain items, just with sort of filler items or other experimental items with the formality, which increases the uncertainty, would you expect to still see the contrast?
That was also one of my concerns after the experiment, and I was able to find this. Like, I did not put it here because there was no time for me to talk about it, but there is apparently 2 participant groups who really like this offendum sentences and who hate them anyway. So the attraction effects in grammaticals with informal existed for both of them. So when this is very this is like a pool of 2 set of participant groups, but what we have is that you have this group of participants who treated these ungrammaticals as really ungrammatical, around like 10%, 20%, and who treat them as like almost as grammatical as the grammatical ones here. In both of them, in both of those participants, you see the effect in informals, grammaticals.
But
Was
like
that the
if
question?
you didn't have the informal marking at the end, but you still had the uncertainty that you introduced by having the formal addressee conditions, would you expect to still see a contrast or not?
If you're asking for my hunch, I would say no. I think there is like something really weird about the register incongruency that trips people off in those sentences, and that enables them to like just like reorient themselves and look for like controllers.
Okay.
But it's a possibility, I have to admit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.